The Legacy Superhero Season 2, Episode 6, Family Ties and Lies. Uncle Josh tackled me to the ground, narrowly saving me from the bullet. I gasped underneath Uncle Josh's weight and scraped my hands and knees against the gravel pavement. "Get in the car, kid," Uncle Josh snapped. "Those guys will kill us both if we don't get out of here now." Uncle Josh jumped off me and ran over to the driver's seat. Confused, but not sure what else to do, I rolled to my feet and rushed over to the passenger's seat. I was vaguely aware of the people on the beach crying out in surprise when they heard the gunshots, but I paid no attention to them. I just tore open the passenger's door, hopped into my seat, and barely secured my seatbelt before Uncle Josh backed out of the parking space and took us roaring down the parking lot toward the open road. But the black sedan also started to back out, trying to block our only way out. "We're going to crash into that car," I screamed. Uncle Josh didn't say anything. He just yanked the steering wheel to the left. We barely passed between another parked car and the sedan, so close that the sides of Uncle Josh's convertible actually scrapped against both vehicles. But somehow we made it through the gap and were roaring down the highway again, heading home. "What was that?" I said. I looked at Uncle Josh. "Who were those people and why did they start shooting at us?" Uncle Josh grimaced. "Just my past catching up to me. Are they following us?" I looked over my shoulder and saw with alarm that the black sedan was back on our tail. It hadn't quite caught up to us, but it was gaining fast and would probably be upon us in a few minutes at most. The front window was too tinted for me to make out who was driving it, which just made me all the more anxious to get the heck out of here. "They're following us," I said, looking at Uncle Josh again, "and they're gaining fast." Uncle Josh cursed under his breath before saying, "Then we'll try to lose them. Trust me, you do not want to end up in their hands." Uncle Josh took a sudden sharp turn down a random street and floored the accelerator. Unfortunately, the sedan made the same turn without any problem and was closer than ever. "They're still on us," I said, grabbing my seat tightly. "Yeah, I know," said Uncle Josh. "We'll just have to find a smaller mouse hole to hide in. Hold on tight." Uncle Josh made another turn, this time into an alleyway between two buildings. It was a tight fit. As we drove by, we slammed into a trash can, sending it flying through the air, as well as causing a feral cat to jump on top of a dumpster that the car scraped against. I winced at the sound of the car scraping against the dumpster. Uncle's convertible was going to need a new paint job once all of this was said and done. "Check to see if they're still following," said Uncle Josh. "I can't take my eyes off the road." I once again looked over my shoulder out the back window and saw no one behind us. Looking at Uncle Josh again, I said, "I don't see them. I don't think they entered the alley after us." Uncle Josh cracked a grin. Figured as much. That car was too wide to fit in this alley. Now we just need to take a few more back streets and we should be home. A loud roar of an engine interrupted Uncle Josh. Ahead, the black sedan burst out of a side alley, completely blocking off the path ahead of us. The sedan came to an abrupt stop smack dab in the middle of the alleyway, making it impossible for us to go around it. And there weren't any side streets we could take to go around it, either. Uncle Josh slammed on the brakes. The tires of his convertible skidded loudly against the pavement, but luckily came to a stop before we crashed into the sedan. Uncle Josh immediately set the convertible into reverse and started going back the way we came, but there were a couple of gunshots followed by the sounds of rubber popping and the car came to a stop. "Wait, what was that?" I said. Uncle Josh cursed again, this time more foully than before. "Must have shot out the tires. Look." Uncle Josh gestured out the windshield. The same man who had shot at us at Lake Dawn now stood out of his car, his gun aimed at us. Now that we weren't running away, I could see that the guy was tall and lithe, but clearly muscular, based on the way his muscles stood out in his black t-shirt. He looked Arabic and was very clean-shaved. Either way, he was dangerous, aiming his gun at us and scowling fiercely at us. "Joshua," the man shouted in a light Arabic accent. "Get out of the car or else I'll shoot you and the kid up." "Who is that guy, Uncle?" I said, looking at Josh. "And how does he know your name?" Uncle Josh looked as if his worst nightmares had come true. "That's a long story which I'm afraid we don't have time for. All you need to know is that I will probably need to leave the car and meet him face to face." "But he's got a gun," I said in alarm. "He'll kill you." "Probably," said Uncle Josh, "but if I don't, he'll still kill me. And you, too, because he's not the kind of guy who's known for his kindness." "I'm coming out with you," I said, reaching for my seatbelt. "No way you're going by yourself." Uncle Josh grabbed my arm, making me look up at him. The expression he wore now was more serious than I'd ever seen on his face before. It would have been enough to make me freeze all by itself, even if Uncle Josh hadn't grabbed my arm. "No," said Uncle Josh firmly. "You have no idea who this guy is or what he's capable of. You need to stay in the car." "But—" "Stay here," said Uncle Josh, his grip on my arm tightening. "I'll try to distract him. And meanwhile, you can try to escape through the trunk. Pull down the back seats and you will be able to get into the trunk, which can be opened from within. Then get the hell out of here and find or call the police. Can you do that for me?" Uncle Josh's seriousness was such a drastic change from his previous laid-back behavior that all I could do was nod dumbly in response. "Joshua," the Arabic man shouted. "I tire of waiting. My trigger finger is starting to slip." Uncle Josh immediately let go of my arm and hopped out of the car, holding up his palms to show that he was unarmed. "Hey, Mohammed, old buddy, old pal. There's no need to scream. I heard you just fine. I was just speaking with my nephew here, giving him some last advice as his uncle. You have a nephew, so you understand, right?" "I killed my nephew," said the Arabic man, who was apparently named Mohammed, after he betrayed my family and dishonored our family name. "Ah," said Uncle Josh, who seemed completely taken aback by Mohammed's frank admission. "Well, the point still stands. We can talk over our differences like real adults. You know we have crossed the threshold where we can just talk our problems over." "Joshua Daniels," said Mohammed, "I have spent a lot of time and money searching for you with one purpose only, to kill you in cold blood for your crimes against my organization." His organization? What the heck was this Mohammed guy talking about? I was tempted to activate the trickshot watch here and now and take down the guy, but that would require revealing my secret identity to Josh and Mohammed, which would just make the situation harder. "You should do what your uncle says," said TW. "Perhaps you can find some place private to change into trickshot so you can come back and help him." "But I'm afraid that if I leave, Uncle Josh will get killed," I said. "It's still the best shot you've got," said TW. "It isn't like you can help him in your current circumstances, after all." "You have a point," I said. While Josh and Mohammed continued talking to each other, I climbed over to the back seats as discreetly as I could. I pulled down the back seats, which went down just like Uncle Josh described, and crawled into the trunk, which was very dark and cramped, especially with the fishing poles lying on the floor. But I saw the tag I could pull to open the trunk from the inside, which glowed in the dark, but I didn't reach for it just yet because I remembered the suitcase I found underneath the floor of the trunk earlier. Peeling back the upturned corner again, I found the suitcase exactly where I left it, complete with the word self-defense written on it in gold lettering. I glanced over my shoulder, but as far as I could tell, Josh and Mohammed were still talking to each other, not fighting or shooting yet. "What are you doing?" said TW. "What is that?" "I don't know," I said under my breath, "but if it says self-defense, I figure it must be a weapon of some kind, a weapon that might help Uncle Josh." "I wouldn't use your uncle's weapons without his permission like this," said TW. "You have no idea what is in there. It could be dangerous." "It's probably just a gun," I said. "I can't imagine what else Uncle might carrying around in a suitcase labeled self-defense. Only one way to find out." I popped open the suitcase and was puzzled by what I found. It wasn't a gun like I thought it would be. It wasn't even a knife. It was some kind of metal glove, which was made out of black and gold metal, shining dully against the few sun rays that managed to filter in through the car windows from outside. Beneath the glove was a label which read Atlas Glove, dangerous, DO not use. Atlas Glove, I repeated in a low voice. "Ever heard of it, TW?" "Can't say I have," said TW, "but I would advise against using it as per the label. It's probably some kind of dangerous prototype weapon." "If it's dangerous, that will just make it even more useful for helping Uncle," I said. "I'm going to take it and see what it does. You never know, it might be useful." "I wouldn't." "Well, I'm not you, now am I?" I said. "Besides, if things go south, I can still use the watch. It's not like it's the end of the world if I mess up." I pulled the Atlas glove out of its packaging and turned it over. It seemed to be about the right size for my hand, so I slipped it on, feeling the glove's inner padding that made it soft on my hand. I flexed the fingers of the glove a few times, but I didn't feel anything particularly strange about it. It felt just like a normal glove. A second later, however, the glove suddenly tightened around my arm. I gasped in surprise and tried to remove the glove, but it wouldn't come off. "That doesn't look good," said TW in my head, "if you cannot remove it." "I'll worry about that later," I said. "For now, let's see what this bad boy does." I pulled the tag of the trunk, causing it to pop open silently. I opened the trunk just wide enough for me to slip out, and I crouched behind the vehicle, making sure to close the trunk on my way out. I moved to the left side of the convertible and peered around the corner to see if the situation had changed. It had not. Uncle Josh still stood across from Muhammad, who was aiming his gun at him still. Only now there was another guy, who, unlike Muhammad, looked more white than anything and a good deal younger than his partner. I assumed he had to be the driver of the vehicle because from what I could tell, Muhammad hadn't been driving the car. "I know how hard you guys have been looking for me, but you're wasting your time," said Uncle Josh. "I don't have anything you want, and killing me won't get you anything." "The superior thinks otherwise," said Muhammad. He cocked his gun. "Now, give us the glove or else we will kill you right where you stand." The glove. I looked down at the glove on my hand. This must have been what they were talking about. I didn't know why they wanted it, but it must have been important if they were willing to go on a car chase for it. Time to find out what it did. I tapped a button on the glove's surface and immediately felt its temperature start to rise. Though my hand on the inside felt just fine, the exterior was getting hotter and hotter. It even began to glow at the tips, and somehow I sensed that these lights weren't just for show. "I don't have it," said Uncle Josh. "I sold the Atlas glove to someone else a while ago. You're out of luck, my Middle Eastern friend." "Your lies don't impress us," said Muhammad with a sneer. "We know that you would never sell such an important object for any amount of money. You're an awful liar." Uncle Josh shrugged. "It was worth a shot. You almost believed me. I saw it in your eyes." "The only thing I am going to believe is your death," said Muhammad. This was my chance. If I didn't move now, Muhammad would shoot Uncle Josh. Time to find out just what the Atlas glove really did. "Standing up," I shouted. "Uncle Josh, get down." Luckily, Uncle Josh didn't even wait. He just fell down to the ground, covering his head with both hands, while Muhammad and the driver looked at me in confusion. "Who are you?" said Muhammad. His eyes widened when he saw me aiming the Atlas glove at him. "The Atlas glove. Put it down now or—" I didn't even let him finish his sentence. I just tapped a button on the Atlas glove. Even I wasn't prepared for what happened next. The Atlas glove suddenly exploded with black energy that shot out from the tips of its fingers directly toward Muhammad and the driver. The two attackers tried to move out of the way, but though they managed to avoid the bulk of the blast, they were nonetheless caught by stray blasts of energy that knocked them both out. The rest of the blast, meanwhile, struck their black sedan, which actually sent it flying through the air head over heels until it crashed into the wall on the opposite side of the alley. It fell to the ground with a loud crunch, smoking rising from the twisted remains of its engine as I stared at it in shock. "Jack." Uncle Josh's voice suddenly pierced the air. "What the hell are you doing with the Atlas glove?" Snapping out of my shock, I saw Uncle Josh walking toward me, his hands balled into fists. Even though he was completely uninjured from the attack, he nonetheless looked as if I had just fired a loaded gun in his face. "I just wanted to help," I said, lowering the Atlas glove to my side, smoke rising from the fingertips. "I saw this suitcase in the trunk, and—" Uncle Josh stopped in front of me and tore the Atlas glove off my hand immediately. He looked over the glove briefly, perhaps to make sure it was still in one piece, and then looked at me with a disapproving scowl. "You could have killed yourself. The recoil alone is enough to break a person's arm. It's a miracle that you're not writhing on the street screaming for your mommy from the pain of your broken arm." I winced at Uncle Josh's harsh tone. "Well, my arm does hurt a little, but—" "I don't care," Uncle Josh interrupted. "I don't understand why you didn't run when I told you to, but I guess you thought you'd play the hero, or something. You could have gotten both of us killed or caused all kinds of collateral damage that I wouldn't be able to explain to the police." "It's not my fault I didn't know what it was," I said. "As a matter of fact, I still don't know what it is." "It's a weapon," said Uncle Josh as he looked around, perhaps to make sure that no one had heard the blast from the Atlas glove. "And a dangerous one, at that. Like I said, you got lucky." I looked around Uncle Josh toward the back of the alley where the smoking car lay. Muhammad and the driver both still lay unconscious on the ground, though they could have been dead for all I knew. And who are these guys, and who is this superior they kept talking about? Uncle Josh rubbed the back of his head, an exasperated look on his face. "I'll explain on the way home. For now, we need to get out of here. It's possible that Muhammad and his friend might be the only two in Rumsfeld. But—" "Only two what?" I said. But Uncle Josh apparently didn't hear me. He looked around again as he continued to speak. "Regardless, someone probably overheard the explosion and has no doubt called the police, which means we don't have much time to get out of here." "Get out of here," I repeated. Why do we need to get out of here? Shouldn't we stay so we can tell the police what happened? Uncle Josh looked at me in annoyance. The last thing I need is for the police to know that I have the Atlas glove, or to start asking me about my connections to these guys. Even you're not supposed to know about the glove, but it's too late now for you, I guess. Well, why shouldn't the police know you have the Atlas glove? I said. Are you afraid they'll confiscate it from you or something? Something like that, said Uncle Josh. In any case, this is a bad place to sit and chat. Let's go home. I'll explain everything to you on the way back. I had to admit that I was curious enough about Uncle Josh's secrets that I didn't bother to argue. Besides, it wasn't like I was very eager to meet the police myself, given how they were currently looking for me in connection to the murder of Baron Glory. Or at least they were looking for Trickshot, though of course it amounted to searching for me just the same. Uncle Josh and I climbed back into his convertible, which he backed out of the alleyway, and then went zooming down the streets, taking the long way back home, probably to give us more time to talk. Uncle Josh had put the Atlas glove on the floor of the back seats, but I couldn't help but feel nervous just the same, because I wasn't sure what Uncle Josh was about to tell me. I scratched the face of the Trickshot watch on my right hand, just in case I needed to use it. What about Mohammed and his driver? I said, glancing over my shoulder out the back window of the car. Are we just leaving them there, or? Yes, said Uncle Josh. They'll probably wake up soon and get away before the police get here. But if we're lucky, they won't have any idea where you or I went. What if the police arrest them? I said, looking at Uncle Josh again. Would that be a problem, or? Nah, said Uncle Josh, shaking his head, though it wouldn't be very useful for the police, I think, because all Icon agents carry cyanide pills on them for exactly that reason. I started. Did you say those guys are Icon agents? Yeah, said Uncle Josh. He glanced at me as we passed the post office. Have you heard of that organization before? I'd be surprised if you have, because they're incredibly secretive and not too many people know about them. I thought through my next words quickly but carefully. I still couldn't let Uncle Josh know that I was Trickshot yet. Therefore, I'd need a good excuse to explain how I knew about Icon, something that he wouldn't think twice about. Yeah, I have, I said casually. I like to read conspiracy theories on the internet for fun, and Icon pops up in a lot of them, though I don't know very much about the organization, to be frank. I thought it was just something a bunch of conspiracy theorists made up. Oh, Icon is real. All right, said Uncle Josh. Real and deadly. I wish I didn't have to drag you into this at all, but those jerks just had to interrupt our day at the lake. Typical Icon behavior. Attack the target when they least expect it. Usually works, but not this time, thankfully. Why is Icon after you? I said. What did you do to earn their ire? It's sitting on the floor of the back seats behind us, said Uncle Josh, jerking a thumb over his shoulder at the Atlas glove. Why do you think Muhammad was asking for it? I looked at the Atlas glove, which sat quietly on the floor of the car, and then back at Uncle Josh. Did you actually steal that from them? Please tell me you didn't. I did, said Uncle Josh, scratching the back of his neck. But it was for a good reason. A very good reason, although Icon obviously disagrees. And what is this good reason? I said. And it better be good, because I'm not sure I want Icon gunning for me now that they know I'm related to you. Of course, Icon already knew that I was Trickshot, but I didn't need to give them yet another reason to try to take me down. Ah well, such was the life of a superhero. Let me start from the beginning, said Uncle Josh. I work for another organization like Icon, but whereas Icon is the bad guys, my organization is the good guys. We call ourselves Pinnacle. I'm going to assume you haven't heard of us. You're right, I said. I haven't. What is Pinnacle? It's another secretive organization much like Icon, said Uncle Josh. But unlike Icon, we're trying to do the right thing. We oppose them at every turn, though that doesn't always mean we beat them, of course. I wasn't sure whether to believe Uncle Josh's claims about being part of yet another super-secret spy organization, but I will admit I was really interested in finding out more about it. How long have you worked for them? 16 years, said Uncle Josh, so roughly about as long as you've been alive. It's the main reason I had to go away and haven't seen the family in forever. My work as an agent of Pinnacle means that I don't get too many off days or too many days to go and visit friends and family the way I would at a normal job. If that's the case, then why did you and Mom act like you had a falling out? I said, if it was just work. Ah, well, it wasn't just work, said Uncle Josh. You see, when I first started working for Pinnacle, I had to leave right away. I didn't have time to say goodbye, so I left without saying goodbye to anyone in the family. Mary thought I'd just up and abandoned everyone to go travel the world. I wanted to tell her that she was wrong, but I never got the chance because, like I said, I was really busy. Does Mom know you work for Pinnacle Mawar? No, said Uncle Josh, shaking his head. She doesn't know where I've been or what I've been doing over the last 16 years, except what I've told her. Technically, I'm supposed to keep my membership in Pinnacle a secret from everyone. I shouldn't even be telling you, but given the circumstances, I don't have much of a choice in that matter right now. So why did you join Pinnacle in the first place? I said. And what is Pinnacle, exactly? Who runs it? Those are all questions I either can't answer right now or don't have time to, said Uncle Josh as we made a sharp turn on a corner. All you need to know is that we're the good guys and Icon are the bad guys. It's a bit more complicated than that, I guess. But that's a good way to break it down. Aha, I said. I glanced over my shoulder at the Atlas glove again and said, and why did you steal the Atlas glove and take it here to Rumsfeld? Heck, what are you doing in Rumsfeld in the first place? I'm waiting for another Pinnacle agent to pick me up, said Uncle Josh. Without revealing too many details, I managed to break into Icon's island headquarters. They have an island headquarters. Uncle Josh nodded and said, yeah, located in the Gulf of Mexico, but due to its cloaking tech, it's very hard to find. Took Pinnacle years just to figure out its general location. I wouldn't recommend going there for a vacation if I were you. I nodded, but deep down, I was giddy with excitement. TW had told me that he didn't know where Icon's headquarters were, but Uncle Josh just gave me the general area I could look in. That meant there was a strong possibility that I could save Grandfather, assuming I could find Icon's cloaked island headquarters. Anyway, that's irrelevant, said Uncle Josh. So I broke into their headquarters, stole the Atlas glove, and broke out. Unfortunately, I was spotted by a couple of Icon agents, which forced me to leave the island earlier than intended. I missed the helicopter that would have taken me back to Pinnacle HQ, but remembered that I had family here in Rumsfeld, so I came by to hang out until Pinnacle sent someone to pick me up. That sounds like something straight out of a spy movie, I said, like James Bond or something. Unlike James Bond, it's 100% real, said Uncle Josh. He shook his head. But it doesn't matter if you believe it or not. As you can tell, Icon is not going to let me get away with the Atlas glove that easily. I figured they would send more agents than that, but given how deadly Mohammed is alone, maybe they thought he would be enough by himself to take me out. You acted like you've met him before, I said, glancing over my shoulder again, just to make sure we weren't being followed. Mohammed, that is. Uncle Josh nodded with a dark grin on his face. You can say that. The two of us have clashed more than a few times over the years on various missions. Last time I saw Mohammed was in China last year when I was trying to stop a load of power from being delivered to a bunch of Uyghur terrorists. He thought for sure I killed the bastard, but I guess he must be tougher than he looks. I found it interesting that Icon was shipping power to other countries in addition to America, but it also made me wonder just what the heck they were trying to accomplish. Were they trying to make money, or did they have deeper motives than that? Shaking my head, I said, "Who is this superior Mohammed mentioned? It sounded like you know him." Uncle Josh grimaced. "Ah, yes, the superior of Icon, Roland Chaser. He's the head honcho, the big cheese, the king of the hill. Easily the most dangerous member of Icon, probably worth at least half of Icon's most elite agents, and that's just his brain." I knew who Chaser was. Last month I'd heard that name bandied about by a certain Icon agent more than a few times, and had, after my fight with the injectors, attempted to learn more about Chaser. Unfortunately, my internet searches had turned up nothing on who this Chaser figure was, but it seemed like Uncle Josh knew. "Who exactly is Chaser?" I said. "Aside from being the head of Icon, that is." "Heck if I know," said Uncle Josh. "If Icon is secretive, Chaser is practically an enigma. All we know is that Chaser founded Icon about 20 years ago and began using it to manufacture, sell, and distribute power drugs to anyone with more money than sense. The best we've been able to figure out is that Chaser is very intelligent, very rich, and very, very dangerous. We don't even know what he looks like. Pinnacle doesn't sound like a very good secret spy agency to me if you don't even know what your main enemy looks like." Uncle Josh huffed. "You've got it backwards, kid. Pinnacle is one of the best spy agencies in the world, with detailed information on nearly every world leader, gang and cartel leaders, business executives, and every other kind of important leader in the world. The fact that we don't have at least an encyclopedia-length file on Chaser means that he's extremely good at covering his tracks." That sure sounded like an excuse to me, but I didn't push the point. "All right, now what is the Atlas glove and why is it so important that you needed to steal it?" The Atlas glove by itself isn't very important, said Uncle Josh. It's part of a much larger weapon that Icon has been working on, which they call Project Atlas. Project Atlas, I repeated. That doesn't sound good. It isn't, said Uncle Josh, shaking his head. While there is still much we don't know about Project Atlas, we do know that it is a dangerous weapon that Icon is trying to create. We don't quite know the full extent of the weapon's power, but from what I saw of it in Icon's HQ, let's just say that even Trickshot probably couldn't beat it. That was debatable, but I didn't say anything in order to make sure Uncle Josh didn't suspect me of being Trickshot. Does Icon need the Atlas glove to complete the weapon? Yep, said Uncle Josh. Without the glove, the weapon is not useless, but not as effective as it normally is. They could always make another one, I guess. But maybe Chaser decided it was cheaper to have one of his agents crack my skull open than waste time and money building another. I looked at the Atlas glove again, thinking about how powerful it had been earlier. No wonder Icon wanted it back. With a weapon like that, you could probably destroy a skyscraper, maybe multiple skyscrapers if you really tried. I almost wanted to keep it for myself, but I knew better than to try to steal it from my uncle. What are you going to do when we get home? I said, leaning back in my seat. Pack my bags and leave, said Uncle Josh without looking at me. Now that Icon knows I'm here and that we're related, they'll probably send someone to the house to attack us when we least expect it. I don't want to put either your or your parents' lives at risk. But you just got here, I said in surprise. You can't leave already. I would have stayed longer, but it isn't safe, said Uncle Josh. Sorry, Jack, but sometimes you've got to do what's right rather than what's easy, and right now it is right for me to leave Rumsfeld and draw Icon away from you guys. I would have argued with him, but I knew that Uncle Josh was right. So I just sat back in my seat, wondering what I would say to Mom and Dad when they found out that Uncle Josh left. When we got home, neither Mom nor Dad were there. As a result, Uncle Josh wasted no time in packing his bags or bag, as it was, because Uncle Josh always traveled light and tossing them into the trunk of his convertible along with the suitcase containing the Atlas glove. I helped him a little, but because Uncle Josh had so few traveling possessions, I didn't need to do much. Before Uncle Josh left, however, he did give me a cover story that I could give Mom and Dad about where he went. He did not want Mom or Dad to know that he was an agent of Pinnacle for security reasons, so we came up with the idea that an old friend of his just died in Britain and that he was going to be at the funeral that was being held on short notice. It was hardly the most elegant or foolproof excuse, but Uncle Josh assured me that it would work just fine for reassuring Mom and Dad that his sudden disappearance was not due to any nefarious reasons. At the very least, they probably wouldn't ask me any more questions about it, which was the real goal, because the more questions they asked me, the more likely I was to accidentally tell them the truth. As soon as Uncle Josh was sure that I had the story down, he hopped into his convertible, waved goodbye, and backed out of the driveway and went zooming down the street to the east. I stood on the front porch, watching his car rapidly make its way down the street until it turned a corner and disappeared from view entirely. I continued to stand there for a few seconds, half hoping Uncle Josh would turn around and come back, but his red convertible did not reappear again. Sighing, I went back into the house and climbed the stairs up to my room, where I closed the door behind me and sat down on my bed. As soon as I sat down, TW flashed before me, a mystified expression on his face. That was quite the experience, wasn't it? I looked at him in surprise. Experience? That's an understatement. It was more like a mini-adventure. Regardless of what you call it, you have to admit that it was unusual, said TW. One of the strangest stories I've ever heard, but I can't say I doubt it. Why not? I said. Have you heard of Pinnacle before? Yes, said TW. Let's see, yes. I believe Gregory teamed up with a Pinnacle agent back sometime in the 90s to take down a notorious international criminal who came to Rumsfeld to rob the city blind. But the Pinnacle agent back then didn't tell us much about his organization, and that was the last we ever heard of it, so much of the information Josh gave you was new to me as well. I leaned forward and rested my forehead on my open palm. Man, this is crazy. I never thought my own uncle was a super-secret spy who traveled around the world battling another evil spy organization. It really is just like James Bond, except with superpowers. Yes, it is surprising, but look on the bright side, said TW. We know more about Chaser and Icon now, at least including a possible location of Icon's headquarters. Somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico, if what Uncle Josh said was true, I said. That gives us a place to look for grandfather once we decide to search for him. Agreed, said TW, nodding. It seems like an odd place for an island base to be, but perhaps that's precisely why they chose it. It doesn't matter why they chose it, I said. I stood up. I'm going to go save grandfather and bring our family back together again. This is great. While I'm just as eager to rescue Gregory as you, I think you have more pressing issues at the moment, said TW, namely, the entire Baron Glory assassination fiasco. You should probably deal with that before you go running off to the Gulf of Mexico, looking for cloaked island bases belonging to criminal spy organizations. My shoulders slumped. Yeah, you've got a point. Besides, the Gulf is a pretty big place. Even if I fly off to there right this very instant, it's not like I would be able to find Icon's base. Exactly, said TW. It's something worth looking into at some point, but for now I think it would be wiser for you to focus on clearing your name. Right? I said, though I still couldn't help but feel at least a little disappointed, because it meant I would have to put off the search for grandfather yet again. How am I supposed to do that? Don't you remember? Said TW. I suppose it must have slipped your mind. You asked me to do some research on Bug Bites HQ, remember? Oh, right, I said, nodding. I almost forgot about that entirely. What did you find? Enough that we could launch an assault on the HQ if you wanted, said TW. Or at least, stage a break-in to find the proof we need that Bug Bite framed you for the murder of Baron Glory. Really? I said. Man, TW, you work fast. TW shrugged. I may be an old program, but I'm still good at what I do. Perhaps you might even say the best. Regardless, this is good news, I said. I folded my arms in front of my chest. I still don't like the idea of Bug Bite being behind the assassination, though. It just doesn't settle well with me. I understand, but the evidence seems to point that way, does it not? Said TW. And the only way to know for sure is to break into his base and find as much proof as we can. I nodded, but deep down, I was troubled by the idea of breaking into Bug Bite's base. It wasn't the breaking in part that really bothered me so much. It was the thought that I might fight Bug Bite again that troubled me. Bug Bite was not as strong or as fast as me, true, but he came very close to beating me in our last confrontation, and I guessed that he was not going to go any easier on me in round 2. Given Bug Bite's vindictive nature, he was probably going to fight me even harder than he did before. Maybe he would unleash a horde of killer wasps on me or something. When do you think we should stage the break-in? I said. I'm thinking we should put off the break-in for a couple more days at least, said TW. I'll need some time to sort all of the data I've collected. Plus, it may behoove you to do some in-person scouting yourself. I sat back down on the bed and frowned. Why do I need to go anywhere when you've already gotten all of the info I'll need from the internet? Because there is some information that you can't get from the internet, said TW. That's another lesson Gregory taught me. While Gregory used technology extensively in his superhero days, he didn't rely upon it exclusively. He liked having real physical experience, especially during these types of missions. Makes sense, I said. All right, tonight I'll scout his headquarters a bit, see if I can find anything useful. We'll probably focus on the exterior of the building, because I'm not sure Bug Bite is keen on letting visitors into his base, especially visitors like me. Good idea, said TW. That is exactly what Gregory would do whenever he needed to break into some place. You should probably also spend the next couple of days getting some rest and training in. That way, you will be in top shape for whatever may await us inside Bug Bite's headquarters. Sure, I said. I yawned. Speaking of rest, I'd like to take a nap right now. All of this spy stuff has tired me out. Go ahead, said TW. I'll continue to do research on Bug Bite's headquarters and see if I can find anything else that might be helpful for the plan. I nodded one more time. TW disappeared in another flash of light, while I lay down on my bed and closed my eyes. It was hard to go to sleep knowing what I would have to soon do, but as Dad always said, you can't do a full day's work without a full night's sleep. Besides, I had motivation to get this done. The quicker I did it, the quicker I could save grandfather. The only question now was whether Bug Bite would be ready for me or not, or whether I was ready for him. The end of the Legacy Superhero Season 2, Episode 6, Family Ties and Lies.